yourself, 'cause it starts with you, and then everyone else will believe you too. And if it looks like you're the only believer around, just keep on believing, don't put yourself down, just believe.
Our guest this week grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, earned a BS in Accounting and Economics from Lehigh University, and an MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. For the last 40-plus years, he's been an iconic figure in the investment industry, while holding key leadership roles for Citicorp, Oppenheimer Funds, Merrill Lynch, BlackRock, and Nuveen. And since 2021, he's been the Chief Investment Officer at Crossmark Global Investments. His name, Bob Dowell. And I'm Jack Krasula, and this is Anything is Possible on 760 WJR. I'm Jack Krasula. This is Anything is Possible, and we're talking to an iconic figure in the investing world for the last 40-plus years, Bob Dowell. Bob, welcome. An honor to have you.
Jack, an honor to be with you. Thanks.
Can we start by talking about growing up in Northeast Philly and your mom and your dad, please?
Oh, sure. So, yeah, I grew up in a row home in Northeast Philadelphia, and mom and dad were stalwart in so many ways, wonderful parents. Both have passed since, but Dad worked as an engineer, and Mom was a homemaker and volunteered at the school and at church from time to time on various projects. And I remember walking to elementary school, and a 15-minute walk through the streets of Northeast Philadelphia, and it was a fun time. I had two younger sisters and, of course, made a lot of friends along the way. What's the biggest thing Dad taught you, and what's the biggest thing that Mom taught you? Wow. Dad, being steadfast, being loyal. Dad was that to people, even to his work. He worked for the same company his entire career. Obviously, you heard my bio. I didn't do that. And while he wouldn't say that's a mistake, boy, was he a loyal guy. Mom, she taught us how to serve other people. Mom had a servant's heart, all the way from, cleaning up the table after every meal before anybody had a chance to get ahead of her in doing that, to the way she interacted with people. Great lady. We're talking to Bob Dowell, who's got an unbelievable resume and 40-plus year body of work. Where, Bob, did you get your lifelong love for the world of investing? Wow, I was dating a girl between undergraduate and graduate school, and her father invested in the stock market. I knew nothing of the stock market prior to that. We had enough to put food on the table, but not a lot to make a whole lot of investments. So it was until those years that I discovered what it was, and I literally fell in love. The interdisciplinary nature of the investment business. It's all about economics and finance and mathematics and psychology and politics. And, Jack, as you know, you can read your score in the newspaper every day. So the competitive nature of it. And no 2 days are the same. The minute you think you have it figured out and have a period of good performance, the market turns around, smacks you in the face, and wakes you up and humbles you. And then you pick up your feet and get started again. And, of course, if you have any success along the way, you're helping people. You're helping organizations do a better job with the resources they have. Let's go back to January of 1980, and you joined Citicorp as a research analyst. You were there for 8 years. How and why did you do that? So I wanted to learn how to be an investor, and knew the best way to do that was as an analyst. Becoming a portfolio manager means you know a little something, and I didn't know much of anything. So I had the privilege of studying and writing reports and making recommendations to portfolio managers in the specialty chemical and oil service industries. Jack, that's how I cut my teeth. Paint for us a picture
of the world of stocks and investing back in 1980, Bob?
Wow. Very different from today. While we had some technology, nothing like we had, like we have now. I mean, we can take our phones and look up what's going on in the market itself and individual stocks. I remember when I broke into the business, it was one machine on the entire floor. And you lined up to find out what was going on in a stock that you were interested in or following, or to get the headlines. It was a very different business. And so as an investor, kind of when you got your information was key. Was I the first to hear? Was I the 15th to hear? Was I the 100th to hear? Today, it's all instantaneous. Everybody gets all the information exactly at the same time. So principles, I guess, were the same, but the methodology has changed, Jack.
We're talking to Bob Dahl, and he's with Crossmark Global Investments, and he's got Dahl's deliberations, so everybody in the world knows immediately what his predictions are on a weekly basis. Sometimes he's right. Sometimes he's got to make a few adjustments. So
you're kind.
All right. From 87 to 99, you're Chief Investment Officer for Oppenheimer Funds. Talk about that chapter, please.
Certainly. Well, I went there in 87 as a portfolio manager, managed a couple of mutual funds in large cap U.S. equities. Along the way, was promoted to head of equities, and by the time that period ended, I was the chief investment officer. So I moved my way, quote, up the ladder by leading by example, trying to engender investment conversations among all the investment professionals, because you point out a few minutes ago, you don't get it right all the time. You make a lot of mistakes, and learning from your mistakes is absolutely key, so you don't make too many of the same mistakes twice. That was a period of time, Jack, when the money management industry, the investment industry, was a cottage industry. Small mutual funds were just really getting into their growth mode, and so we were pretty left alone. It was entrepreneurial business, not all the regulation we have today.
We're talking to Bob Dahl, and I quote him now, "The hardest move in my career was leaving Oppenheimer to go to Merrill Lynch." When we come back, we're going to ask him to talk about how and why he did that. And I'm Jack Krasula, and this is Anything is Possible on 760 WJR. This is Anything is Possible. I'm your host, Jack Krasula. We're with Bob Dahl. And from 87 to 99, he was Chief Investment Officer for Oppenheimer Funds. Bob, once again, I quote you, "The hardest move in my career, leaving Oppenheimer to go to Merrill Lynch." Why so, and why did you do it?
Yeah, it was a period of time when I was enjoying myself at Oppenheimer Funds. We were a firm that was growing quickly. I had become Chief Investment Officer, so I was one of the most senior people there. And, as many people said, Bob, you could finish your career here and have a great career. So that was the reason. There was no push out of Oppenheimer Funds. I guess the attraction to Merrill Lynch investment managers, it was global. Oppenheimer Funds was a domestic company, and global was just a whole new dimension to find out about the rest of the world as an investor that I didn't have in my bag of tricks. And that is among several, and probably the main reason I finally pulled the trigger to go. Merrill Lynch Investment Managers at the time was really struggling from an investment performance standpoint. So that was daunting, but, it's sort of like the last place baseball team. You do some smart things, you can move at least to the middle of the pack, and over time to the top of the pack. And so that enticed me, and I pulled the trigger. And it was a wonderful move with 20/20 hindsight.
I'm a huge Chicago Cubs fan. And it took us 108 years, Bob, but we did it. We did it.
You made it.
All right. You've been with different firms. Talk to us about the importance of culture.
Wow. Books have obviously been written on this subject, Jack, not only in general, but for the investment business in particular. And look, it's the good of an investment organization is the sum of its parts and how they're put together. I'm a firm believer, as I said a few minutes ago, that no one has all the answers, and therefore, to figure out where among your colleagues is there strength, where you might have weakness, is part of building a culture. It's not a bunch of individuals doing their thing. It's them together making 1 + 1 greater than 2. Not unlike the baseball analogy we used a few minutes ago. You have some stars on your team, yes, but those stars are part of the team, and often those stars are the guys who really lead the team. And so culture is very important. Somebody said to me, it's really hard to describe, but you know it when you walk into it. And that was the joy I had to help in every investment organization I've been to participate in and help build and lead the culture.
You've been phenomenally successful, regular guest and contributor to multiple media outlets, including CNBC, Bloomberg TV, MoneyWise, Fox Business News. We see you all the time. Talk to us about your faith journey.
Certainly. So what I didn't say about Mom and Dad is that they were Christians, and so they took me and my two sisters to church every Sunday. And that began a journey. Being born into a Christian home does not make one a Christian, but it perhaps, can I use this phrase, increases the odds. I would not have named any day where I wouldn't say Jesus Christ was my Savior, and every day goes by, I still try to serve Him as Lord, and that's a process that never ends while we're on this planet. So my journey has been one, like many people, of constantly looking upward and outward and growing via listening to people wiser and more mature than me, reading good books, listening to good sermons, praying, interacting with other Christians. I don't know how people get through life without that piece of their life.
All right, you joined Merrill Lynch, I believe, in 99, but from 2001 to 2006, you were the president and chief investment officer of Merrill Lynch. And I one day in early 2000, I went up to the top of the Merrill Lynch headquarters to meet with David Kaminsky. And he talked about looking out the window on 9/11 from his office. Bob, where were you on 9/11?
9/11, I was in California. I was at an investment conference in San Francisco and quickly heard what was happening. We had the television on and saw the plane hit the second tower, and wow. I had difficulty getting back, as everybody did. It happened on a Tuesday morning, I remember vividly, and I didn't get back till Friday afternoon. The investment conference I was part of was, as you can imagine, abruptly canceled, and lots of phone calls back and forth, early attempts at phone calls that didn't go through because circuits were busy and circuits were down. But wow, what an experience for all of us that remember where we were and living through that.
At this point in your career, you started to become more vocal about your faith. Why did you do that, and how did you do that?
Yeah, I curious if this really is the most important thing in life, and I would say at every stage the answer is yes. Why didn't I talk about it more? And there was a time, how naive, when I thought maybe I'm the only Christian on Wall Street. I just didn't see anybody. And I sort of raised my hand halfway, figuratively speaking, and lo and behold, other people did the same thing, and we found each other, and that was a comforting thought along the way. A couple of things, Jack, I remember particularly as the head of the asset management business at Merrill, I would say to people, when they asked me on Monday morning, how was your weekend, what did you do? Instead of answering the question for the things I did differently, I was always and I went to church, assuming I did, which I do just about every Sunday. And I'll never forget when one guy asked me 2 Mondays in a row, and when I said, and I went to church the second Monday, he said, you went to church last week. Do you go to church every week? What a conversation that led to. The other thing that I did was to say if somebody had a problem, and when they do, they often come see the head of the business, and I said, I'd be praying for you. And if they came back a second time, I'd say, can I pray for you now? And no one ever said no. And that was a great way for me to start conversations with people about faith.
We're talking to Bob Dowell, who's with Crossmark Global Investments. He does Dowell's Deliberations. 40 years ago, there was this E.F. Hutton. When he talks, people listen. Now, when Bob Dowell talks, people listen. And we're listening to him on 760 WJR. Welcome back to Anything is Possible. I'm Jack Krasula. We're with Bob Dowell. On October 2nd, Bob, 2006, BlackRock and Merrill Lynch investment managers merged, and you became the chief investment officer of the combined group. You were on the board. Talk about that 6-year chapter of your life.
Certainly. Well, the truth is we did merge, but more accurately, BlackRock bought Merrill Lynch Investment Managers. Of course, that meant that they controlled the shots, and appropriately so. When you buy something, it's yours. So they were an interesting 6 years. We obviously turned Merrill Lynch Investment Managers around from what it was to make it something attractive for a smart, quickly growing asset management firm like BlackRock. You know, if I had to look at those 6 years, the first 3 years, I was my main responsibility. I led equities. I was chief investment officer of the equity business, but was to convince employees of MLIM, Merrill Lynch Investment Managers, that BlackRock was a good place. So they should stay. And also clients that we had to convince them that this new merger was a good thing and they should stay. And that was a big, important role, and I think we did it okay. Once that was in place, I still nose the grindstone, tried to get good investment performance, lead the equity business, contribute to the overall results of the new firm. And with 20/20 hindsight, those 3 years, I was slowly but surely marginalized, I guess. And 6 years in, I lost my job. They didn't need/want me anymore, and that was a tough period. I wasn't ready for that. I had transferred some of my identity to my work, and now that I didn't have the job anymore, kind of who am I?
If the truth be known, the reason that they let you go, BlackRock, in June of 2012 was because you'd been sharing your faith with some employees and clients.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't employees and clients. It was outside the firm. It wasn't firm people, firm time, firm place. It was other groups. For example, they found a video of me doing the commencement address for a Christian university and a few other videos similar to that, and weren't too pleased that I was introduced as a senior person at the firm and then went on to, quote, speak to my church group. So that was that was the reason cited. But, of course, we all know if you're senior at a firm, unless you have your hand in the cookie jar, which thankfully I didn't, there are always a multitude of reasons that, cause people to leave/ask to leave firms in those senior positions, and that happened to me. And I look back, and as hard as it was living through it, it was a really good thing.
Really good, because in 2012, you joined Nuveen Asset Management as their chief equity strategist, and you were with them for 9 years until 2021. Talk about the chapter with Nuveen Asset Management.
Yeah, great firm, founded decades ago by Christians, headquartered in Chicago, so Midwest values. I enjoyed my time there. Nuveen was then, a couple of years before I left, sold to a different firm, a New York firm, and the culture began to change, and I didn't fit in anymore and decided, and they felt the same way, it was time for Bob to leave, and so I left about 2 years ago.
Yes, and then you were retired for 3 months. And maybe Leslie said, I married you for better, for poorer, for richer, for better, et cetera, but not for lunch. Okay.
Not for lunch, yeah. So I actually did retire from BlackRock. I was eligible, years of service and age, and then again retired from Nuveen. So maybe one of these retirements will be for real. When I left Nuveen, I had no intention of retiring. I began a search in the faith-based investment management world, and had the joy of ending up at Crossmark, the firm I'm now employed by.
All right. Crossmark is faith-based. Tell us about Crossmark Global Investments.
Sure. We are a faith-based firm that manages values-based products. In short, what we're trying to do is help individuals and institutions line up their investments with their values. I mean, think about it, Jack. People earn their money, presumably, according to their values. They're unlikely to run out and rob a bank because it doesn't fit their values. And then kind of at the other end, how they spend their money, where they might give their money, they give it a lot of thought because they want to make it consistent with what they believe in. But this in-between piece, the investment piece, which is often a way station from the time I earn it to the time I spend it or give it away, people spend less time, if any, in many cases thinking about that, and that's what we try to do, help people line up their values with, in fact, their investments, such that they might say, well, maybe there's some companies I shouldn't be invested in because they make products that hurt and harm and kill people. Conversely, are there companies I might think about owning that actually help people, promote justice, promote family values, treat their employees, their customers, their community, their environment well? And that's part of our research project. Now, we don't invest in companies just because it's doing good things. It's got to have the traditional, got to be a good business with growth prospects, selling at a reasonable price. It's putting the two together that's so exciting.
If you want to learn more, www.crossmarkglobal.com. Crossmarkglobal.com. Their mission, Crossmark Global Investments, exists to inspire and equip our clients, community, and employees to go further in their pursuit of all that God has for them, where investments and values intersect. All right, the president is actually from Detroit, Mike Kern. And he was the president of Stout Rissius Ross. Tell us about Mike Kern.
Certainly. Mike was recruited almost 7 years ago to be the CEO of Crossmark, having come from Stout, as you just pointed out. And he remains the CEO, and he's the person primarily responsible for hiring me to be Chief Investment Officer, CIO, of the business. And Mike is a strong man of faith, a good leader, and has made a lot of changes over the years at Crossmark to make it the firm that it now is, poised for more growth.
All right, let's talk about the screening process, if you would, Bob.
Sure. So there are two parts of it. The one that people are most acquainted with, because everybody that's in this part of the business does it, is the exclusions. What am I not going to invest in? Because, and the list is a little different for everybody, but I'll just make it general. Companies that harm people. Examples, abortion, tobacco, and the list is a little longer depending who the client is. The more interesting and more time-consuming part, as I just pointed out, is the positive side. So literally, as a portfolio manager, my job is to rank companies from all the standard metrics, cash flow, valuation, quality of management, that sort of thing. But simultaneously, we're focused on the values side. Who are the companies that are doing well? And we get a ranking there, and we put the two together, and that helps inform our security selection process, and then we use traditional risk management processes to create a portfolio for the well-being of the client that we have in mind.
You want to learn more at www.crossmarkglobal.com. We're talking to Bob Dahl. When we come back, we're going to ask him about a listener tonight that says there's no way performance-wise that you guys can compete. It's like you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back by only investing in companies that have the right values. And I'm Jack Krasula, and this is Anything is Possible on 760 WJR.
Jack Krasula, host of WJR's Anything is Possible, the weekly radio visit, brings his 15 years of inspirational storytelling to hardcover. With God, anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
15 of Jack's more than 750 tales of defeating odds and achieving the extraordinary. Like Bob Woodruff, whose job covering the war in Iraq nearly cost him his life. And Nick Vujicic, the limbless evangelist who has stunned millions with his message of acceptance and grace. With God, anything is possible. Order now while signed copies are still available at trustinusllc.square.site. That's trustinusllc.square.site. And as Jack says,
make it a great week, because with God, anything is possible. Spohom.
Anything is possible.
I'm Jack Krasula. This is Anything is Possible. We're talking to Bob Dahl, an iconic figure in the investing world for 40-plus years, currently the Chief Investment Officer at Crossmark Global Investments. Bob, a listener tonight that says, performance-wise, you just can't compete. You're fighting, you're at a gunfight with a butter knife. How do you answer?
Yeah, a logical and often, I should say, always asked questions. You know, Jack, if you'd asked me this 10 years ago, kind of when I left BlackRock to go to Nuveen and thought for a minute or two about doing what I have now done, I couldn't have answered that question. I said, well, you know, do you give up a half a percent a year? Is it 2% a year? How much do I have to give up? Well, fast forward to today and recent years, we now have so much empirical research on actual portfolios that show / prove you don't give up anything. In fact, there's some studies show by investing in good companies with all the other good aspects that we talked about earlier, you actually do a little bit better. But I'll dismiss that and say statistically insignificant difference. And that, therefore, you don't give up anything. So I like to say, who wouldn't want to line up their portfolios both for this life and the next? And that's what we're attempting to do for people.
I quote you again, the portfolios we have are suitable for this life and the next life, eternal life, which is forever. Proverbs 3, verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all ways submit to him, and he'll make your path straight. Are you telling us, Bob, that still can work today?
Yes, it can, and can work and does work in every aspect of life, including investments. Our view is if we can't perform as well as everybody else, we don't deserve to be in business. And therefore, that the proposition that you don't give up anything in this side of heaven to gain the other side of heaven in investment business is a wonderful piece of good news.
All right. SRI, socially responsible investing. What does that mean?
Well, SRI, it means different things to different people. It has similarities to the values-based approach that we take, but it's broader because what's socially acceptable to one person may not be socially acceptable to the next person, and so you get a whole lot of bifurcation inside